Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alexandra, and today I will moderate the webinar for you guys. So I see people already signing in. If you wish, please introduce yourself in the comments. Tell us where you're from. That's always nice to know. So today we're very glad that you took the time and have joined us for the webinar. Our webinar, Standardization and Optimization of Global AR e-Invoicing at Agfa-Gevaert. So to start off, I will maybe introduce our speakers. First off, I don't know if it's on my right or on my left, but maybe he will wave. We have Nick van den Berg. Hello, Nick. E-Invoicing consultant at Kommer. And he will talk about the actual process and steps necessary for the delivery of such a project. And he will also touch on some important technical aspects as well as standards and legal framework. Then on the other side, we have our dear guest speaker, Peter Delen, Finance Manager Europe at Agfa-Gevaert. And Peter will share his side of the story. So how the need for the project actually came about and what main challenges and complexities were experienced from Agfa's side. So then for the agenda of the webinar, so you know what we're going to talk about. First, Peter will introduce Agfa as a company. Then Nick will introduce Comark. And also for those who are not yet familiar with basic e-invoicing concepts, we'll give a short explanation about that. And then we will move on to our main subject, so the Agfa and Comark business case. Now, during the webinar, feel free to ask questions. Our speakers will very gladly answer them during or at the end of the webinar. If you see a question that someone else asked that also interests you, don't hesitate to upvote it. You can do that by clicking on a button with an arrow. Then we will see that a lot of people are interested and we will definitely prioritize the question. We will do our best to answer everything live. However, if we are super popular and that doesn't happen, we will send you a quick email after the webinar and we'll be sure to answer your question. Also, we will have a couple of polls. For this, feel free to explore the right panel and do give us your opinion. We're very interested. Also, should your kids or pets or other elements at home distract you during the webinar, no worries at all. Feel free to devote your entire attention to them because we will record the webinar and we'll drop you a quick mail just after the webinar and with a link to the recording. So also in this email, we will have the PowerPoint from the webinar, our contact details. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to end there. So sit back and relax. We hope you enjoy. And now I will leave the floor to Peter.
Okay, thank you. And also thank you, Comark, for being able to present Agfa as a company and the project we embarked on now. I think a lot of people will know or remember at least the brand Agfa from the old consumer imaging film rolls. For more than 150 years, meanwhile, the group has been active in the imaging as a big word. Now, today, the Agfa-Gevaert group, with his headquarters in Belgium, in Mortsel, is still active in the development, manufacturing, and distribution of analog and digital systems, as well as in IT solutions. This is mainly done for the printing industry and the healthcare sector, but also for specific industrial applications. The turnover of our turnover is mainly generated in B2B markets, but the company contributes to everybody's everyday life. For example, when you read a newspaper or when you visit a hospital, the Agfa-Gevaert group is closely involved. Now, the group strives to be the partner of choice in all the markets in which it operates. And our understanding of the market and business and the individual needs of our customers allows us to offer leading edge technology and affordable solutions and innovative ways of working. Now, the group has a divisional structure, which is built around solutions, as you can see. Solutions in offset printing, newspaper, magazines, packaging, also inkjet printing for the printing industries, but not to forget radiology imaging, digital direct computed X-ray, and IT solutions for healthcare sector. And last but not least, based on the big history the company has, as well as the experiences, we also offer what we call derived and connected industrial solutions like printed electronics and circuit boards, synthetic paper, membranes, security cards, etc., etc. In 2019, the company generated a turnover of around 2.2 billion euro, and around 10,000 employees are employed worldwide. So that's a little bit in a nutshell the Agfa-Gevaert group. And I'm happy to let also Nick introduce Comarch to have the full picture of this webinar.
Thanks a lot for the introduction about Agfa, and also thank you for joining us today. I will explain just a bit about Comarch. We were founded in 1993 by one of the professors of the IT University of Krakow, who is currently still the CEO of Comarch. Currently, we have over 6,000 employees, and we have a global presence worldwide. Most of our solutions are self-developed. Around 93% of our revenue comes from sales of our own software and products. Also, if you look at the business unit that I am in and responsible for the Benelux market, our business unit has 4 main product groups. One of them, which is master data management, the other one that is EDI, online distribution, and of course the star of today, e-invoicing. Just to give you like a global view or like a quick view of where we are present, we have clients and projects worldwide, such as Metro, where we have a project in EDI in around 24 countries, but also like Agfa, where we have e-invoicing in 44 countries. We have Unilever, British Petrol, Nestle, etc. So a couple of big brands that we do e-invoicing or EDI for, or master data management. Now I will go over to just to give you like a very quick introduction about e-invoicing. If you're not familiar with e-invoicing, electronic invoicing is basically the exchange of the invoice document between a supplier and its buyer in an electronic format. Now, some people think that an electronic format also includes a PDF file, but actually this is not true. A PDF is not an electronic format. If we look at an electronic format, this means an XML file or an EDI file that can automatically be recognized by an ERP system, and there's almost no manual labor involved. In general, in the world at this moment, there are 2 global approaches to electronic invoices. One is the post-audit approach, and one is the clearance approach. The post-audit, which is very common in US, Canada, in the European Union, where basically you have to store your invoices up to a certain amount of time. And then the more interesting approach when it comes to e-invoicing and why we see more implementations of e-invoicing worldwide is the clearance approach, where a country actually makes it mandatory for you to exchange invoices, and these invoices have to go to the tax authority first. They will approve these invoices, and either, such as in Italy, which has a clearance approach, Italy will automatically send the invoice to your buyer. So you don't even have to send the invoice anymore to your buyer. You just send it to the tax authority, and they will send it to your buyer. If we look at the national trends, the post-audit model, as I said, is mostly in Canada, European Union countries. And we see the clearance approach mostly in Latin American countries, Turkey, Russia, Asia, etc. From these 2 models that I've just explained is actually one of the main reasons Agfa has started up their project. And that is why I directly want to switch to the business case. Of course, all of you are here to hear more about the business case, so we will go over to the business case right now. Peter, can you explain a bit more why Agfa started up an e-invoicing project? I mean, we started the project with you guys in January 2019, but we've been talking about it since the summer 2018. What happened before the summer 2018 when you made the decision to set up such a project?
Well, as we are, I mentioned in the introduction of the group that we are present we have a worldwide presence. So in that, due to the fact we were operational in different countries, we are exposed automatically to a lot of compliance in terms of invoicing. And more, this compliance becomes digital. And we learned rather fast that we would not be able with our own resources and our own systems to deal and to remain compliant in all the different countries we are active. So we were looking for solutions. And also one of the strategic choices was not to look for different partners across the world, but to look for one partner who was able to support us in terms of e-invoicing on a worldwide level. Hence the start of the e-invoicing project within Agfa.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your answer. And this directly links to one of the polls that we actually want to publish, which I'm curious about. And this one is, what are the key drives for e-invoicing adoption in your company from the audience perspective? If you're not currently working on e-invoicing in your company, but you're, for example, a consultant that does consulting for e-invoicing, please feel free to answer the poll in which cases you see most of the time happening when you consult companies on e-invoicing. Peter, you mentioned that you wanted one global vendor. Can you explain a bit more about how you started up the process to set up an e-invoicing project for accounts receivable and looking for those global vendors?
Yeah, of course. Well, we have set up, first of all, internally what we call a multidisciplinary project team in which finance, but also customer operations, purchasing, and ICS participated. And that project team made up an RFP in which we explained the complexity of our company, also in terms of systems that we are using. That RFP was sent out to different suppliers, and those suppliers had the opportunity first to present their solution. Based on that first presentation, internally we made a short list of 3 vendors, and those vendors had the opportunity to give a more detailed presentation, including a demo on their solution for e-invoicing within our company. Now, it is most probably not a surprise that at the end we selected Comarch as our preferred partner. Otherwise, I would most probably not be sitting here. But they convinced us during the demo that they were able to connect to different systems, that they were present on a global level, and also that there was a kind of advisory role foreseen going forward, because we do not know exactly what is going to happen in the near future in Europe or even in other geographies. And therefore, we also count on the Comarch advisory role to help us in a proactive way to be ready to embark other countries or to shift our planning. I hope, Nick, that this more or less is answering the question.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the kind words about Comarch. That's very nice to hear. From my perspective, you talked a bit about the complexity of your project, choosing one global vendor. We will immediately go to a second poll where I actually want to see the strategy of other companies as well, because what I can see in my day-to-day job is that either people we have projects with such as Agfa where we are handling 44 countries for one specific company, but it can also happen that companies just approach us for one specific company, like for Italy or for India or for the Netherlands or for Benelux or only for Europe. What I'm curious about from the audience perspective is what kind of strategy do you have when it comes to e-invoicing adoption? Like, do you choose one global vendor or do you go for a local vendor? And Peter, for you, the next question is the complexity of the project, the scope. You've talked about it, you've explained it a bit, but what is the actual scope of the project? Can you maybe elaborate a bit more on that?
Well, yeah, in total, we talk about around 100 countries where we are active in, and different IT systems. And it is impossible to do it all at once. So the first scope of phase one is Europe as a geography, where we also focused, out of the 4 business units we have, that 3 will join the e-invoicing project, because these 3 divisions are using our main SAP backbone system, and that is then easier as a project to coordinate. For these 2 main SAP platforms, we are setting up the connection with Comarch, country by country. And with Comarch, we decided to activate the tracking tool, which allows us centrally to follow on where we are with e-invoices in terms of delivery to the customer. But also on top, we decided to activate the customer portal via which is the channel via which we deliver our invoices towards our customers in a PDF format or XML or any other connection the customer wants to activate to get our invoices on time and without paper.
Yes, thanks a lot of telling a bit more about the scope. It sounds quite an extensive startup from Agfa's side, but also from Comarch's side, of course, implementing a solution in plus 40 countries over 3 different business units, working with different people from business units. We do this from a day-to-day job. Like we have multiple projects in e-invoicing. But how is it as a company like Agfa to set up such a program? Like how do you do that? Where does that come from?
Well, we set up a steering committee. That was a first decision. We needed a steering committee, and not unimportant to mention is that in that steering committee also Comarch participates, so that we have direct contact on the progress or the problems, but also the successes within the process as we move on. Below that steering committee, there is a focus on transactional systems, as they both, and also the divisions that's key of connected with the different divisions, they all have their own specifics in terms of customer needs and the way the system is set up. So the project has 2 pillars, the 2 main SAP platforms, which is coordinated by a steering committee, again, in which Comarch is participating. And also, I must say that this helped us to easily gear up the project, and is now helping us to plan as we move on the next steps. But that is something we will most probably tackle in the rest of this webinar.
Yeah, it's one thing that we can see definitely works in this project is that we have these moments every month, every 2 months, where we all come together, all 3 business units from Agfa, the project manager from Comarch, the consultants from Comarch, sometimes the BU director from the business unit director from our side, to just discuss the project, see where we're going, and see where we can tackle the issues. This has also led to some results of the project. And can you tell us a bit more, Peter, about where we are right now with the project and what the current results are?
Yes, of course. We started in the beginning under pressure, I must say, with Italy, where new legislation forced us to move to e-invoicing for our Italian customers. And that was for us a little bit of proof of concept. So we had not much time to really think about all the different aspects of a project, but we managed to get the Italian invoicing live in, I think, 2 months, which was great. Meanwhile, also Portugal, which is a smaller country in terms of business for us, we managed to bring Portugal live via the portal. And then we started to look at France, which is a bigger market for us, and also from a country size point of view, bigger than some other countries. So that's where we are right now. France is also meanwhile live. We are in the startup there, so the project has not yet ended. The whole Corona situation was not the best thing to happen for this project neither. So we are still in project mode there, but we hope to work on next countries soon, to start working on that, so that we can roll in more countries to come. Although we know that due to the experience we have right now with Italy, with Portugal, and with Spain, we expect to be able to speed up the go live for the other countries more and better than that we had in the past, due to the fact that we had to learn on what is needed, what do we need to do, and what is expected from our customers.
Yeah, thanks for that. You've already talked a bit about lessons learned. One of them was, of course, onboarding of business partners. And you've already talked about the France. We are France scope. We are going live. We are in implementation. The coronavirus, of course, has hit everybody that is listening to this webinar, and we can also see that a bit in the setup of the program, setup of the project. Could you explain a bit more about the onboarding difficulties that we've had in France, and also the lessons learned behind those?
Yeah, of course. First of all, lessons learned also for me personally was that in the beginning we had a very ambitious planning. So we truly believed that in 1 max 2 years time we would be able to get on board all the countries in Europe, and that we were ready for the future. Now a lot of things are happening internally but also externally, which makes you decide to do things differently as we move on. Again, the Steerco is helping us there to get to an agreement in order to make then a new planning, which is having a better view on the future. The planning is now what we call more short-term rather than long-term. We focus on a 3-month window, and we try to work country by country and not try to do everything at once, because that is definitely not helping. Now, one of the biggest lessons learned is on the onboarding, like you mentioned, Nick. The onboarding in France was difficult, and we learned that we need to work more upfront in getting contact with the customers to inform them on what is going to happen. And also we realized that in today's world, digitalization also has a negative sound sometimes, and people think sometimes in terms of fraud and malicious emails. So it is the lessons we learned is clearly that we need to inform our customers upfront, to make sure that the majority of customers are onboarded prior to the real go live, and then you have a smoother go live rather than going live, onboarding at the same time, because then you end up in a kind of a vicious circle, and it's very difficult to break it. And then, like I mentioned, the COVID crisis was then not helping, because a lot of customers have now other priorities than clicking on a link to get access to a portal. Yeah.
So from of course we as Comarch, we also have our lessons learned that informing the business partners is definitely something that we should, or in the next steps together with Agfa, should pay more attention to, involving account managers from different countries. Do you think it's difficult because you're working on a project in plus 40 countries as well, that there's also a cultural aspect to these to the rollouts?
Well, I think so. You see the sensitivity of languages. You see also the sensitivity of approaching customers via email, especially in a business where you have a close customer contact. So customers expect a certain service level, and with an e-invoicing program, they sometimes think that that we are reducing the service levels, which is definitely not true. On the contrary, we are even giving them more opportunities to work together. The cultural thing, I think the majority is connected with legislation also. Compare Italy with France. In Italy, the law was clearly stipulating, as from January 1st, 2019, we will move to e-invoicing, whether you like it or not. And in 1-2 months' time, I must say this worked quite well, also from a governmental platform point of view. Where in France, it's more still the paperwork, what is expected, and then changing all of them towards an e-invoicing, because also that's important to know. We wanted to approach our customers, all of them in the same way. Yeah, it makes it then difficult to get to the right and desired level of onboarding.
Yeah, definitely something that we can see again. Like if you also take the example of Italy and France when it comes to onboarding, Italy, we nowadays, since the obligation in January 2019, we only have to make one connection. We connect SAP via an AS2 channel, SFTP channel to, or the 3 SAP instances from Agfa to our Comarch e-invoicing portal, and we connect our Comarch e-invoicing portal to SDI, and it's done. That's basically the most simple way of onboarding. For us, it works very well as well, because it's only that one connection that we have to make. For countries like France, where there's not a real mandate for businesses to use e-invoicing, it's quite difficult to convince. Like the big companies, okay, you can easily convince them that they need e-invoicing because they are currently probably also working on an e-invoicing project. From a smaller company perspective, a company that's not able to use technology, also a global vendor or global corporations that are asking them to use their e-invoicing portals, where they have to log into multiple portals at the same time, is also a bit of an issue there. So we can see that in multiple projects. It's not only an issue that we have in Agfa's project when it comes to onboarding the long tail of suppliers or buyers in this case from Agfa's side. It's actually also something that I'm interested in from an audience perspective. And Alex, if you could publish this poll, is what are your biggest challenges in your current e-invoicing project? I've actually picked out 4 or 5 options that I see most commonly, which number one, also the data in NL over the last couple of years has showed this, that onboarding of business partners is one of the biggest issues that there is. The second one is something that Peter also mentioned, where it comes to legal compliance from this side, is that you have to follow all these mandatory regulations, especially in Latin America. Everything is different. There's no one global mandate or like Latin American mandate that handles all the different formats and handles all the different tax authorities, but you have to have one good partner, whether it's Comarch or someone else, that can actually handle these legal compliance issues. Another point, which maybe you don't see that often, is that it could be internal resources. Especially in this big project, I'm glad to hear from Agfa's side, at least they set up a steering committee. They got everybody together, but sometimes people really underestimate a rollout plan for e-invoicing. They underestimate how many people need to be involved in this. It's people from IT, it's people from finance. And from that point of view, it could be quite difficult to have these internal resources. And the third point of view is change management. And Peter, I actually want to hear your opinion on this, because in France, you also had some account managers in France that were saying like, hey, maybe this is not the best way, right? Or like, do you have the feeling that you have to explain a lot why we're doing this internally?
Definitely. When everything runs smoothly, you will not get a lot of comments or complaints. But of course, when things go more difficult, and then especially in this onboarding situation, you get more comments from the business as if things are not okay in terms of concept and processes. Now, why? Because this relates to invoices you send to a customer, and invoices which are at the end then not delivered if the onboarding is not completed. An invoice which is not delivered leads then at the end to not being able to cash the invoice, and automatically you end up in these I'm not saying endless, but you end up in discussions also internally on okay, is this project still the right way to go? So yeah, that's part of the project, and we are ready to continue this internal discussions where needed, because I still feel and I believe that we have taken the right decision, that we are also moving in the right direction. And even with the changing environment, we should not forget Taiwan, Brazil, a lot of other countries, they come into the picture. We have a kind of flexibility, and we prepare ourselves for the future. So, and yes, also with Comarch, we sometimes have discussions on do we need to do it like this? Does it need to be solved today? Is it urgent? Is it not urgent? And for me, as we embark together in this journey, it is logic, and these are the things we will continue to have every time that we roll in a new country. But again, this is part of a project, and I feel that still today, we are still able to talk about these things, to escalate issues when needed. And at the end, we come with a solution. And that's the positive story about this. So are we there already? Definitely not. Do we still have a lot of things to do? The answer is yes. And are we working still together to get to the end state? Also, the answer there is yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think thanks a lot for that conclusion. But I think I agree on the point where you also mentioned the flexibility, right? Brazil coming in, Taiwan coming in. I think 3 months ago we had India that was mandating it for 1st of April, but they moved it due to the Corona situation. But this is also why a rollout plan for e-invoicing needs to be very flexible. Legal requirements are currently changing at a constant rate. Greece has already they already have a regulation that has been approved by the parliament, but they haven't put it into place yet. But it can be that they say, for example, from 1st of January 2021, e-invoicing will be mandatory for everyone. And that is where we also have to think about the planning from this perspective, and from Agfa's perspective, is that we have to follow also all the mandatory regulations that are needed. Then next to that, of course, every project has a risk of delay, especially projects of these skills. We're talking about a rollout of an e-invoicing rollout in 44 countries. This doesn't happen overnight. It does kind of happen overnight with Italy. One connection, simple onboarding. It's very practical there, so it can be done in a couple of weeks. But for other countries where, for example, e-invoicing is not mandatory, and business partners are saying like, hey, we don't really want to, we are already using 2 portals for 2 different corporations. We don't want the 3rd portal there as well. It's really something you have to incorporate into your the way of communicating when you're talking to your business partners, your clients, your buyers, or your suppliers. And last but not least, as Peter mentioned, like we also have discussions, we also have issues, we also have escalations. But this is what you should expect. We're working together for the next 5 to 10 years, so it's kind of a marriage. Like there will be issues both internal and external. But I think with the steer codes that we have implemented, the talks that we have regularly, we are handling it quite well. From that point of view, thanks again, Peter, for your opportunity to talk about the webinar, and thanks again for doing this. And that will be all from Peter and my side when it comes about the business case. I can see that there has been some questions, so I want to move to those. Feel free to type in your question whenever you want to ask me or Peter a question, and we will go from there. So I will go on and look at some of the questions, and I will answer them live. One of them has already been answered, I can see. How would you assess machine-readable PDF in the perspective of EDI processing? A question from Rocco. I think he's from Assa Abloy, the IT manager, as I saw him in his chat. Well, machine-readable PDF is still not that accurate. I mean, you can do it with OCR, but optical character recognition is actually does not have a 99% or like 100% accuracy. Actually, for every mistake it corrects, it creates another mistake. So you can never be at the full 99 or 100% or 99.9%. There always has to be some manual interaction. So what I always would do is still use OCR if you receive PDFs, because that is the best way to approach PDFs at this point. But also try to encourage your suppliers to send you e-invoicing messages. From my perspective in the Netherlands, all bookkeeping software systems, we have around 100 of them. Every sector has a different one. It's kind of crazy actually. But they are all able to send an e-invoice. Most of the small suppliers actually don't know that this is the case, or the bookkeeping system that they have can send an e-invoice. So also try to educate or involve your software provider in educating your supplier with leaflets, some webinars, for example, where they can explain what is the process that is happening and how we are moving forward. I hope that answered your question. From the other perspective, the question was already answered by Jeroen, and this is one that I want to involve Peter in, or by Alexandra, but this is one I want to involve Peter in as well, is we've talked about the customer portal. Peter, Jeroen is asking us if it's also possible to connect directly to the customer e-invoicing tool. From our perspective, it is possible. From Comarch's perspective, also in the customer portal that we have, it is actually possible to set up an AS2 channel yourself as a customer. Peter, do you get a lot of these requests from your customers to send them e-invoices, and how do you typically handle these?
Well, we started by setting as a default that the customer needed to retrieve from the portal the PDF invoice, so download the invoice, because that was then for us also a trigger to be sure that the customer received the invoice. I must say that the majority of our customers are more keen to get an email notification together with an attachment, a PDF attachment, which is then the copy of the invoice, rather than connecting to the portal and downloading the invoice. I am sure personally that once we have more and more customers using the portal, that we will see some customers who will ask to connect directly to the data, which is behind the PDF, and to connect that data towards their accounting system. But today, the customers we have today onboarded, they more want to receive a PDF invoice by email, which is then sent via the portal. So that's the experience we have today.
Okay, Jeroen, I hope that answers your question. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to me via my email address. Another perspective, and this is actually something that you can explain, Peter, rather than me explaining, because I work for Comarch, so I will probably be selling Comarch as well. But Steve's representative from the UK is asking, is saying the following: we are being encouraged by our technology group to use ERP, in their case SAP, solutions for e-invoicing. What does a third party bring over these solutions? What does a third party like Comarch bring over these solutions, Peter, from your perspective, instead of using SAP's Ariba?
Yeah, well, the reason why we selected another partner, in this case Comarch, was not that we had problems by sending PDF invoices towards a customer, but is more connected with the compliance issues we have and would have when governments are forcing us to connect with local platforms in a structured way. And then it was our belief that that ongoing programming out of SAP was too difficult to do it by ourselves, or to use SAP as the partner to make it happen. We believed that they would not be able to react that fast for this specific domain in the SAP platform. And we learned that with Italy, where you have an XML structure and you need to set up a daily connection of your invoices issued, And in order to do that, for all the other countries across the globe, we believed that a partner, in this case Comarch, would be better placed than SAP as a solution.
Thank you for answering that. I hope that answers your question, Steve. Moving on to the next question, and then we have one last one, and then we will move forward from that. And this is also one that I want to involve you a bit in, Peter, when it comes to the onboarding perspective. Arthur from Warsaw is asking, or from Poland, I don't know if he was from Warsaw, but definitely from Poland. In case of sending e-invoices as PDF from SAP directly, what strategy, stream, source you choose to collect email addresses from the clients? I think in Agfa's case, it's the account managers that have access to these email addresses, and also you have it stored in SAP, correct?
Correct, yeah. In case we have a PDF chain out of SAP directly, we have a contact, and don't ask me where exactly in SAP it is stored, but the email address, the recipient of the email is stored in SAP and is then getting a copy of each invoice issued to that customer.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. I hope that answers your question as well. Moving on to the next one, and this one I have to understand. I'm going to answer it from my perspective and from my understanding. Is when invoices are sent to Comarch and from Comarch to government portals, how does the customer exactly receive the invoices? Do they check from the government portal, or do they have another vendor transmitting the data from the government portal? From my perspective and from my experience, either the government portal is connecting to the client directly, such as in Italy, or customers are handling it with a third party, another vendor. It could be Comarch as well, could be Boss, or it could be anybody else. What I know is that in some countries, small local government, decentralized public authorities, so as a small municipality, they can pick it up from the government portal if they don't have the capable technology to actually get the invoice directly into their ERP system or bookkeeping system that is working. In any case, usually it is that the government portal is directly connected to another vendor that is being used by, for example, the Ministry of Defense or anything like that. And then a question for Peter, because I think it's cross-border as well, but we are currently handling mostly domestic B2B and B2G e-invoices for Agfa. Any cross-border in the scope, Peter, at the moment?
What do you mean with cross-border, Nick?
From the Netherlands to Belgium, or from Belgium to Germany, or from Belgium to France.
Well, yes, we are. For us, we look at customers depending on where they are located. So the moment that we would start with the customers in the Netherlands or in Germany, all invoices issued to these customers, irrespectively from where they are coming, will become part of this e-invoicing program. So then automatically also cross-border will become part of this project.
Yeah, and at the moment right now, the way we probably use it is we'll still use the customer portal. Also, there is, as far as I know, there are no regulations in the EU in, for example, Italy. It is not mandatory yet for cross-border invoices to be sent to the tax authority. So those are still handled by the customer portal or any other way. Yes. And if we look at when it will be mandatory for cross-border e-invoicing in the European Union or in Latin America or in the USA, I don't have a really concrete answer to that. For me, it would be kind of complicated, and we would need one global central system. Because from my perspective, if I'm a company in Italy and I have a client in, for example, Asia, China, or in the US or in Brazil, I don't see the Italian tax authority connecting to this client in Brazil. So there's quite a complication there when it comes to cross-border e-invoicing in the clearance model way, because For a model like Italy, it will be quite complicated to handle this. The Italian government will have to connect to, or the Italian tech authority will have to connect to all the clients that you have outside of Italy, which could be more complicated. And then I don't know if these are questions because it's not really a question mark, but I will answer them and go ahead. It seems that it's easier to implement e-invoicing when this is mandatory, like in Italy or Spain. Could be, yeah. The clearance models are definitely a bit easier to implement because there's usually one connection. But it could also be that the tax authority is not sending the e-invoice to the buyer, and you still have to send the e-invoice to your buyers, where you have to set up two connections. You have to set up one to the tax authority and one to your buyers. The one to your tax authority to send your invoice to and get the approval, and then you still have to forward it to your buyers. So that is still something that is, that in some countries it could be easier, like in Italy, where for domestic invoices only, as I just said, you send them to SDI, and SDI handles everything after that. So it can be easier. It might also not be easier. And then the last comment from Laurent, which I will also comment on. It's a pity to not have an EU standard way of dealing with e-invoicing, as this is costing a lot of money to set it up and to maintain it. Italy live in January 2019 and upgrade of version in October 2020 already. It is indeed a pity that we don't have a real EU standard way of dealing with e-invoicing. We do have some EU standards, like we have a format that is that every country has to follow, but they're not really obliging you to follow this format. You just, or like to exactly follow this format. Every country can give its own taste of this format, which also resolves into a lot of different formats again, because the Netherlands is interpreting this format differently than Belgium is, and Germany is also interpreting this differently, and then Sweden comes along and says like, hey, we are going to interpret it differently as well. So then, you have all kinds of different formats again. It is kind of a pity to not have an EU standard. I agree. I mean, they're talking about it. Some politicians are saying service providers shouldn't even exist. We should just have one format and one way of exchanging the e-invoices. But as far as we know, this is not in the planning to develop such a tool. And the EU is currently just saying to everybody, that every country, that if they want to implement a specific format or a specific way of e-invoicing, it's their decision how to turn the guidelines that the EU is giving into mandates. And then the last point from Rocco, and this is one I want to involve you in for Peter as well. Maybe you can explain a bit more about this. As Rocco is saying that he is on the buyer side and he sees a great variety of possibilities in the e-invoicing solution. That makes it difficult to make the business case positive. How did Agfa make the business case positive, Peter?
The business case positive, if you talk about pure money, I do not think we speak about a positive business case. What are the items which are also important to know is that, okay, we save on print and mail expenses. Still, a lot of invoices were printed and sent to the customer. By having it in a digital way, we believe that at the end we get less questions on missing invoices because we have them through the portal, we have them stored, customers can collect them at any time. And also the fact that when there is new legislation in a certain country, and when we have a partner like Comarch who is able to connect and who is promising us that they will be able to connect to different platforms going forward, well, there the saving is that then we do not need to spend ICS resources in programming connections to these different platforms, because we will turn automatically to Comarch saying the data is already available on your platform. where in the past it was sent to the customer. It is now your role, and that's how we have the partnership defined, to connect now to that governmental platform and map the fields and the data set provided to you in a way that the government in country X is accepting our data. So the business case today is most probably euro-wise not positive, but in the long run, we are sure that this is enabling us to speed up connections to governments and to be ready for the future. So see it as a kind of an investment in the future as well.
From the beginning side of the project, yeah, and afterwards you will get that return of investment. Then I'm done answering these questions. We'll have 2 more questions and then we will probably end it because we're reaching time as we speak. Looking on the 40 countries covered by the global project, was there any local legal requirement in any country to have written confirmation from the client to receiving e-invoices, or simply no, any written approval is needed? You have in most post-audit countries, you need either verbal or written approval from your buyer to send an e-invoice. I think in the current countries that we are handling, we have France where you need written approval, Italy of course where it's just a clearance model, so you have to be mandatory. Any other countries or topics you can think about, Peter, where you need the written approval from your order?
We have heard that comment often that there is a written approval needed. At the same time, we received sometimes advices saying that once a customer is paying an invoice which was delivered in a certain way, that also implies that the customer accepts the way that the invoice was delivered to him. So it's a little bit a mixed bag, I think. If you follow the law black, white, most probably you will need often a written consent up front. Now, having an onboarding procedure where a customer is accepting the use of the portal, you can also consider it as a kind of a written consent from a customer. And then, like I mentioned, secondly, if you deliver an invoice through the portal and the customer is paying that invoice, well, then it means that he's in acceptance with the way that we deliver the invoice. But that is also something we have to see as we move on. Today, we don't have the problem. And it is possible that in a certain country, there is a more strict legislation on having a written consent up front.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Well, that was it from our side. We still have 2 questions left. One for Peter and one for us. The one is customer solution compliant with the latest legal requirements in Portugal, and that's a fairly easy answer. Yes, it is. We are currently handling B2G invoicing for Agfa in Portugal and B2B as well, or is on the roadmap. And then the last one for Peter. To enable e-invoicing for 40 countries, how did you deal with onboarding them to Peppol? Or if not Peppol, what was your connection mode? I think we don't actually have a country where we had to use Peppol at the moment. We are
no, not yet.
We are connecting. We are directly connecting to the government portals at the moment. So in France, we are directly connected to Course Pro. In Italy, we are directly connected to STI. So we prefer a direct connection. But if it's not necessary, then we can also use Peppol. Comarch is also a certified Peppol access point. So if it will be needed in this project, then we can help. Thanks. Well, thanks everybody for joining the webinar. Feel free to reach out to me via email if you have any other questions, comments, or if you just want to talk. Also, if you want to have contact with Peter, just give me an email and I will see if Peter is open to have a conversation about the Agfa project with a bit more deeper insight from a finance perspective, maybe, etc. Thanks again for joining. I hope you all have a wonderful day and stay safe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.